I now call to order the meeting of the Master Plan Implementation Committee on January 3rd at 6:30. Our first order of business is the adoption of the agenda, which has changed significantly since some of you last saw, based on the results of our last meeting. To summarize very quickly, we took everything that we were working on and moved it into a report section. So for those of you that are working on special areas, you'll have a chance to talk on those issues when we report on them under reports. And we kept a couple items here that I need to talk to you about. Specifically, the two committees we're setting up, big things we're dealing with. And then our big new project is to kind of walk through this book, starting with the housing, in an effort to update the sections, the goals, which I know is a big goal the planning department wants from us, is a kind of a checklist of what's done and what's not and where we stand. Sort of our new big project. So, given that we had that, does the new agenda sort of meet everyone's criteria? Is there anything anyone wants to add to the agenda? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move we approve the agenda. I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All against? Any abstentions? That's all in favor. Then we have the approval of the minutes, which I saw. I don't know what you were talking about. Forgot his computer crashed halfway through. I thought they looked great.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I have one thing. Under transportation, in the action steps, the list of people who should be giving us feedback, Williston should be in there as well.
Williston?
Yes.
Williston, okay. So note that should be changed. I don't have any problem with that. Anything else?
This is really minor, and I let it. My last name is Keller, although my email says Weber, which is my old last name. So,
do you want me to change that in the?
I guess if you want to change it on.
I wouldn't call it minor.
Well, I mean.
How do you spell it?
Keller.
I'm sorry if that was my fault in getting it wrong.
I'm really not a big name person. But I felt like maybe I should have notes reflect
We're giving you all the credit for all the great things you're going to do with it again.
Right. And this is even more minor, but Allison has one L. So that I care about less.
Okay, so Alex,
Are there two S's or just one L?
Just one L, one S.
Is that the usual spelling? What?
I think it is.
Okay.
People, Allison.
You usually spell.
Unless you're in like Scandinavia or something.
Other than that, any alterations to the minutes? Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All against? Abstentions? And it passes. All right. Any comments from the peanut gallery? No? Okay. All right, then we're going to talk about, or I'll speak to briefly to the issues we had here about setting up the committees. First, the Transportation Committee. I had comments from both Jessica and the mayor on both of these issues, the Transportation and the Energy Commission. For the Transportation Commission, the only feedback that I got that really gave us any direction was from the mayor saying, yes, we can kind of fish for people from other groups and other authorities. And he said that the appropriate way to do that is that we should start the committee by having a working group on transportation, and then invite these people to join our working group as the core of the committee. Now, we won't be the committee, sort of like, I envisioned it in my head as budding. I don't know if that means anything to anyone, but sort of like we'll take a core of people here that are very interested in the topic and start sort of...
Gardening, budding.
Yes,
Oh,
exactly.
okay, I didn't, okay, sorry. Got it.
I could have been more specific.
No, I just wasn't thinking about gardening.
And then invite the other important leaders from the various boards that we talked about, that we made a list of in the minutes, to the group. So that's the best idea, and that's straight from the mayor, as to how to proceed to form that committee that I've heard so far. Does anyone else have any other ideas about how we might go about it?
Is this a standing committee or a subcommittee?
Standing for both of them.
Okay.
And both, I mean, the Energy Commission as well as the Transportation. They don't really want us to start subcommittees. Both Jess and the mayor were quite firm about that.
Does it have to be either or? I mean, can it be a working group, but also having... So what would be the purpose of the working group?
Well, that's really to get it started.
Okay.
Once it has enough mass, then it gets to the point where these are sort of the people on it, and it becomes its own entity. You know, when I first heard the idea, it was kind of a, you know, we're not really the people that need to be discussing this. We're, you know, we can kind of make sure it happens and get it moving, but do we have experts? Maybe one, a couple people who are interested, certainly, but we don't make up the body. So I think this is really just, as I kind of worked my way around it logically, it's kind of a vehicle to get it started, and that's all.
And I just want to make sure I'm getting working group right. Can you just elaborate a little bit?
Well, I can only tell you what, I mean, the word used was working group.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I received. So I'd be happy to tell you how I envisioned it, but it came to me in an email.
Mm-hmm.
You should, the comment, I believe, was, you feel free to invite those people to your working group.
Mm-hmm. So does that mean to what it, I wonder if it means to others what it means to me. I tend to think of along the lines of a workshop type thing. There are quite a few of them that have happened here upstairs. I went to the one not so long ago where everybody kind of, Jessica laid out the vision, defined some of the tools and the goals, and then there's a lot of feedback. The thing that seems a little different is I don't recall for many of those, well, I guess some of them do. You get your volunteers, and then those people work out another time to continue that. Is that along the right lines, you think, or?
I didn't personally envision the public, you know, meeting side of it, but other than that, it matches sort of what my view was. Although I don't really have a view, I want to get more, please.
I do think that if we set up a working group, it behooves this group to set a clear outline of the role and expectations of the members of that group.
Okay.
As like that just seems like a little bit of work that we should do in order to make sure that the group has clear understanding of what they're charged with, and then.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. In fact, it's exactly what's being done for the Energy Commission, which we started on last meeting, voted the number base and kind of gave them a vague mission statement,
Mm-hmm.
which I'll talk about in a moment that the mayor's fleshed out. I completely agree.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, originally before this came up as a working group, I sort of thought that's what we were going to do. We were going to set a number of people, which we kind of did for the Transportation Committee. You know, these people are the ones that should be on the committee. And then the question was like, how do we put them together? How do we make sure that someone from each, you know, can be a part and set it? And I just envisioned we'd kind of go out, speak to them, you know, canvass a little bit, fill it, and set them up as a committee, and off they'd go. So this idea of it kind of, again, budding off of us is kind of a novel thought for me.
I can see some benefits to it because a lot of times those things start out in the exploratory stage, but that's sort of handled already. That's we've well, in even preceding this group, the exploratory part is kind of already at least started, if not taken to a pretty good plateau. So that's a little different than some of these other things that seem similar. So in this case, we're looking more for the product. We're looking to create a charge and then hoping those people can manifest.
So we have a list now of who we want to be in the group, and let's say we come up with a paragraph or a page or whatever that's sort of the more detailed mission statement. The question for me in this is, in terms of working group, do we devote entire sessions to talking about transportation and invite them here to be a part of us? Do we invite them to be a piece of our conversation, which is transportation? How much of us is that?
Because I mean, I don't know what the problem or the strict kind of no subcommittee, but to me that means that we need to
Delegate?
Yeah, like envision and then release, and then envision and then release. And so I think that that's what's becoming clearer to me is our role, which is to understand the issue, define it, set a vision, and probably early leadership. Like, I think that probably one of us would probably have to staff that working group for at least a couple months before it gets, going really well, and then maybe back away, because otherwise you could probably become involved in that. And then,
So you want us to kind of say, all right, take a group of people, 2 or 3 that are interested in joining you here today, and invite as many people as possible. We'll help and see if we can reach some of the people on the list, and have a separate meeting that's sort of an exploratory meeting of us to see what they can do. And then it's not really a subcommittee, although in order for to do that, I think we have to do open meeting law. I'm pretty sure I'm going to check on that, but I think that you'll have to be a subcommittee temporarily until you split off on your own existence, unless we held it during our meetings.
see, that's where I don't, why, okay.
Yeah, I don't
Could I just maybe take before we figure out is anybody here interested in being on a working group for transportation?
I'll do it.
For transportation.
So, I mean, that could be a potential issue.
Yeah.
So then maybe the approach is we have to find a way to work it, that we all become a de facto working group.
Or do any of us think we can recruit people who would be interested on being involved in transportation? Because maybe that's, like
And we
you
have a list
mentioned,
to
have
go. I
one
think we
night
could.
where you bring people in and have this discussion, and then that group coalesce and, like you're saying, goes
And
out.
I think a lot of the people that were on the original master plan group would probably they're very vested, and so they were subcommittees. I mean, that was a large group, but it was divided into subcommittees that included a transportation. And so I would think some of those people might be likely candidates.
Which then the question raised for me is, why would we use a different method than the Energy Commission?
It is an interesting question. I think the reason is because there's some momentum. We have the mayor. We still have to try and find a big leader, but it's something he's invested in, so he's done a lot, as I'll talk about in a moment with that. And we don't really we have one person on this. I don't know if that's something you want to lead as a group, and you see yourself as a future chair of this committee. I mean, maybe it is, in which case, awesome.
I don't know.
But
I will stay with it. I don't know that I want to be the chair of it, but like I was talking to Eric Snyder at the chamber yesterday, asking him who for a possible name from the business community. He said, let me talk to people and get back to you. And I spoke to someone from Williston, and they said I should talk to either the head of school or the dean of the faculty and get them involved that way. So that's...
I think of all the ideas I've heard so far, and this is just me, the one I like best is the one where we have like one transportation day out of our meetings, and we invite like all these people to come in and be a part of that day. And then we try to get some interest bubbling and moving, and it kind of exists under us until you're ready to take wings and fly.
And from what I understand about the PVTA advisory board, the PVTA advisory board, anyone can show up at their meetings. The only people who vote at those meetings are the mayors, the chairs of the select boards, etc. So it's not like the way Jean Tacey was explaining it to me from Northampton. It sounded like there were these other people who were on the advisory board of the PVTA, and in fact what it is they are just people who attend regularly. I don't know if there's anyone else from Easthampton who attends regularly other than the mayor.
Yeah, the mayor did tell me that the finance director is our PVTA representative. I'll confirm that in the email, but I'm pretty sure that's
Okay, but do any other local people show show up just as interested parties.
That's something the transportation
what?
group, transportation day, we can all discuss. Did you want to?
No, I just wanted to say that initially the idea of like, well, what is a working group? And obviously, I think it's about instigating dialogue, right? I mean, just so I understand what everybody else feels about it, right? So it's about getting the word out. It's about having a conversation. And it sounds like what the mayor is saying, that they don't want redundancy. And they probably don't want other groups that are going to step on the toes of people who have control or power or whatever. Is that right? I mean, is this...
Given only that one little quote I have, I could easily insinuate that, but I don't know for sure. But I think that's a right vein.
Yeah. No, I'm just...
So is the goal of this to become a separate committee?
Absolutely.
So that's like the ultimate goal?
Yeah, they have to be their own, take it and run. And it's kind of our job to sort of just make that happen, make that committee exist.
And this is also my personal observation more than anything. But I noticed there's a way that things can end up sort of in a vicious cycle. I'm wondering if part of the thing we could manage is to avoid them going back to square one with this. Like I said, we've really already got a lot of, it's not that we wouldn't be open to new information, but in a way, something that seems different in this case is we're really saying, so this has already been determined, which is different than what a lot of the committees are, where they're sort of
using this as a guide.
Yeah, this is the guide, and so what we're looking for is for you to create, generate, or produce X, Y, and Z, as opposed to saying, so how could we improve? You know, it's not as abstract as it usually is in the beginning of a committee.
So you're saying they would take as their marching orders the lift up the transportation section out of the master plan?
I would at least think that we
That
would
would
want
be
to
good.
keep them,
Very focused.
tightly focused, exactly. That would be one of the benefits of one of...
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So here's a couple of questions for the committee so that we can come out with something concrete with us. I'd like to find out, because it seems like there's two pieces here. One is when we have this, if in fact we have this meeting where we pull people in and invite people all around, what is it that we're going to discuss at that meeting? And I think clearly it should be what the marching orders are, what the mission statement is. So do you agree with me that that should be what's discussed at that meeting? Yes, no? Who here wants to take responsibility in making, and it may not even be necessary, you may say, I don't think that's necessary, but maybe like a one-page summary or a paragraph summary of what that section sort of entails as a mission statement. Is there anyone here that would be willing to?
Like a draft.
Yeah, it's just a draft, because I want them to work on it, but I just want to kind of, like you said, give them a start.
Mm-hmm.
Is anyone willing to run with that?
I can write a draft.
And this is about transportation. Thank you very much, Kurt. Now, the group, do you agree about this sort of one-day transportation idea and inviting people all around, or is there different?
The only thing I'm wondering, I'm trying to remember what it was called, that the Easthampton Arts Council did for the, I'm sorry, I just am spacing on the district.
Easthampton Cultural District.
Cultural District,
Yes.
thank you, sorry. I thought that was productive, and one of the things that seemed to be working there was, first it's sort of a presentation mode, and here's what we have, here's what we know, here's what our goals are. Then that public forum might be a little different in this particular committee. It's not such a public thing, but the discussion, I guess you could say.
We might be able to blow these up and put them on a stand.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
I would think that's a little more like a workshop than just our meeting being focused. Instead of us having this meeting and focusing it on transportation, if it wasn't more of a special, gathering focused specifically on this topic with those kind of materials, that would give them the ability to just stay focused on what they're up to and get that kind of start. Does that sound right?
So the meeting, if I'm understanding correctly, please correct me if I'm wrong, the meeting begins with a review of what's been discussed here, maybe a board that we flip, a brief mission statement about what should be accomplished, and then we start to get feedback from those people and we let them start stewing, rolling,
Right.
and we end with now please go become a committee.
Right.
I think you start with that too. I mean, I think, there's like fundraisers where when you are invited to the event, you're going to be asked at the end of the event. So I think the invitation could be, I'm asking you to consider this, and at the end of the meeting, I'm going to ask for your commitment.
That's good, let them know.
I mean,
I agree.
Yeah.
Because I think we need to be clear that only one of us is tentatively interested in ongoing part or full-time work with this group. So I think none of us is ready to say, I'm ready to join like another committee. So I think we need to ask for people to leave with a clear understanding that, yeah, I want to take this and run with it, or not so much.
But I would put the focus on, it's not because it may be also true that we're not looking to join another committee, but it's because we're looking for expertise that exists outside of this collection.
Yes.
This group here doesn't necessarily contain the expertise we need to get those things accomplished, and that's why we would be inviting these people.
Right.
We're
It's
saying,
not a shirking of
you represent
responsibility.
knowledge and information that we're trying to bring to the table.
I think that we're in general consensus. Does anyone have a different opinion on how this should proceed? So I'd like to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just one thing, some of this in the actual master plan
Page?
160, similar to what we discussed last week, some of the people who are suggested in the plan to be on such a committee include people from the planning, zoning, DPW, city council, mayor's office, etc. It's not exactly voluntary. I mean, so would the mayor be willing to
Flex his arm.
Well, we
appoint
Political
people
arm.
to be on this committee?
I can,
Or endorse?
yeah, well, actually, the truth is I've already asked him, and what he said was you need to invite those people to come to your working group. So I think that what we need to do is contact them and say the mayor has asked us to contact you. And not just the mayor, but, the city needs you. And
CC him in the email so they know.
See, yeah, I like this. So this is a really good point here. It's about, I mean, obviously we're not forcing people, but it's a serious thing. It's something that our community would benefit from, and they're the people who are in a position to affect it.
Mm-hmm.
We really do need them. So, I mean, we say that. I think that's a really good point. So, we have a lot to cover. So what I think we should do is stew on this. I'm going to see if I can't ask Jessica if she's capable of printing some of the big stuff. You're going to write a paragraph, and if everyone else could think about, we put out, I think, you probably saw one of my emails, the list of the people that are supposed to be there. At the next meeting, if you could come with the ability to ask at least one of them so we can divvy this up, because I think a personal conversation will go a whole lot longer for something of this magnitude than just an email. So I'd like to divvy up contacting these individuals. So at the next meeting we have, everyone just try to pick one. I see you. You might know a person or two on our list, I don't know. And so I think that's enough for now. And next meeting we can kind of bring it all together, inform it, talk a little bit more about what the plan for that day is, when the day will be, that sort of thing. Is that okay?
Okay, you're going to have to do it without me. If the next meeting is the 17th, I won't be here.
Okay. Well, that's important. We'll take a couple of meetings before we take action, so I think that'll be okay. I mean, we have time.
Yeah.
There's no need to rush it. It's been how many years since this was published? 5. The Energy Commission. The mayor took a look at our recommendation. I think you guys saw me email that out. And he liked it. He wasn't familiar with the reference that Jim asked us to approve of at the last meeting, MG8I or whatever that was, G something. So we were able to pinpoint which one it was to him. He looked at it, thought it looked good, but felt that it contained elements that we couldn't financially support. It had criteria in it that had staffing requirements that were beyond our ability to fulfill. So he said he took the good parts from it and looked at a whole bunch of other cities and sent me a list of like 5 different cities that he was looking at and said, I'm working on putting together a more formal proposal and we'll have it to you soon. Jessica also said that she's working on the public announcement for recruitment for the committee. So the ball's rolling, and it seems like in very good hands. Any questions about that?
So that seems like a pending action and work on with other people.
Yep, and in fact, I'll take it off the list for the next agenda, having reported that, unless they all of a sudden come forward, we're done, now go find somebody, in which case. If there's no more questions on that, we move to our primary focus of the evening, which is the Chapter 4 housing project. Now, I'm glad you're here. Jason did ask me to say in regards to this, so I'll just report this part from him, that he's sorry he couldn't make it tonight, that he had some thoughts about how we can, the whole purpose of going through this again is so that we can update what's been done and what's not. And he has some thoughts about how we might be able to accomplish that whole larger overall goal, not just this chapter on housing, is what he said, and including how the public might be involved in that process. He said he's going to work on it and get back to us with at least some thoughts by the next meeting. So having reported that, in terms of how to proceed through this, I'm assuming we've all read the introductory text, the piece here about where we stand, what's available for housing. The last meeting we had some public comments that sort of challenged some of what's in here. Maybe it's changed. The comments that stated, do we really need that much housing? Where this document clearly indicates, I think there were numbers bandied about 95.7% of the housing was utilized or something. Forgive me if I'm not quoting the exact number, but it basically, this chapter painted a bleak picture of availability, saying that we don't have much and we're in need of it, that there's not enough low-income housing, that renting prices are going up, and basically families are being left behind. At the last meeting, there was a challenging comment to that. So I think for me personally, the thing that I'm most worried about in here is, after 5 years, is this still true?
Well, I'm just, as I was reading through it also, I mean, this is just before the housing bubble too, so I think my big concern also was, just in my neighborhood alone, there's been a lot of foreclosures. They were these owner-occupied multi-family houses, so prices have dropped. I think there's been some significant changes. I think also here it pointed out this moving target that we have, where there's more condos, and I also know people who took their multifamilies, condominiumized. So I think between what happened to the market between when this was published and now, and how many new developments have come in, there needs to be some kind of fact checking, where are we at now with it? But we're clearly still under 10%. So there's some updating. Like I was talking before, there's some inventory that needs to
When you say we're under 10%?
Of the affordable.
So it's still, even with what's changed, you feel it's still not up to standards and up to par?
I know we're still under 10% because of that 40B project that just went in.
Okay.
So, or is going in. I mean, that was part of the discussion, was that.
Okay.
We're still at I think it was very close to 6%.
Of housing in Easthampton is defined as affordable.
Now, there's also that East Street project, but it's not built yet, so where does that fall in?
Well, and that's sort of the thing. It's like there's East Street, and now there's Cottage Street that was approved, Parsons Village, which is approved, but at the time that this was published, the previous Parsons Village project is referenced in here, but never moved.
Right.
So there's some of this, where will these new projects put us, and what is aging out and going out of? I mean, that's that moving target piece. That's kind of hard. I don't know, where we could get new data. What is the most recent data?
I wonder if the PVPC is what put this together in terms of getting the stats.
So I think it was.
So they'd be who we talk to, I think. So I think, unless there's disagreement, we have an action item in here to contact the PVPC and try to get some statistical information.
Stats, yeah.
Now, overall, our job is to implement the master plan. And we've had discussions in the past about, we could go on and on about challenging and changing the master plan. But I have to say, personally, for me, this is a big issue. I mean, if we've really changed or not. And we've changed, but maybe not. You're saying it's not a huge amount that you're discovering, so maybe we still push forward with this. That's important to me.
I think this was one of the big things that the people on the master plan also worried about. I remember us being really concerned that we were trying to create a manifesto, maybe is the right word, of goals, but then we wanted actionable items. But that was part of the problem of the methodology, is that you end up with a whole bunch of, strategy 1, strategy 2. But like it says, they're moving targets. So I don't think the intention ever was, rote obedience to these line items. It was about the goals. But then also, we didn't want it to just be a philosophical document. So the hope was that those goals would somehow be manifest in action. But I would think it would be true to the intention behind the whole plan to reassess the statistics, get the data, so that it was getting at the, what the core idea.
And certainly having the points written out helps us know what to focus on. So then we come to the question of how to proceed here. Do we go through these line items? Do we highlight the things that we think are already done and see if we can check them off? Does anyone have an idea of how they want to proceed?
Why wouldn't we go ahead and anything that's
Done
able to
already.
be crossed
Like
off?
through the
that's-
strategy list? And then my
In the back.
question was sort of like, can we reprioritize these? Because I just was looking at this and see like a really simple reshuffling that could get the ball rolling. I mean, this is not a simple issue, but there's a reshuffling of priorities that I think at this moment in Easthampton could really help.
I don't want to trample, but I'm
Yeah.
very opinionated about this, and you can back me up with it too, right?
No.
But the priorities was a really contested thing, because we
I figured
created a
looking at it,
priority
yes.
list, but
Yes.
everyone was really adamant that that was just a function of the process. Was this really was 40R really the number one most important?
Well, that's my
Priority?
question is why
It
wasn't
was not. It was not ever meant to be this trumps that. That was never what was supposed to happen. This trumps that. That was not the case. All these things are lined up equal on the table, side by side. Not this is more important than that.
Or not more important, but which could really get the ball rolling and started and then create the snowball.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking here and I just think what just came out of New City is education. And seeing that being like way at the bottom. Like who is the Easthampton Housing Partnership? When were they created and what is affordable housing? Put that at the top and people will start to understand, all the levels, home ownership, rental, downtown development, da-da-da. I mean, that seems like if you're looking for a place to jump in, because actually some of these things did happen. There were letters to the editor written, there were this and there were that. But I think they just created contention the way that it happened. And then I went to, if 40R was already in place, this discussion would have been a lot easier than it was.
I'd like to pose a point that I think will be the reality in how we go through this. I think it's most likely we'll end up just walking through these relatively quickly over the course of a couple of meetings to figure out what's been done and get that out of the way. And then what it's going to come down to is about personal feelings, because it's the people here at this table that are going to make these things happen. So whoever's vocal about some particular issue on this list, they're going to be pushing it and they're going to be supporting it, and that's what we're going to be talking about, and that's the reality of it. So if something is not a priority for you that you want to be a priority for, it's squeaky wheel time.
Yeah.
And that's probably how that's going to organically grow. So.
And that's what I'm agreeing.
Yeah.
If
And
it's not
I
clear on-
looking at the goals and then going, how did they prioritize this? And I just pictured like
I'm
battle
trying
axes
to
around
say
the
that I
table.
think reordering those things is
Yeah.
absolutely a good
Yeah.
idea.
So, any other thoughts about process? I know you've got thoughts about process, Allison. You're why
No,
we're
but,
here.
but I don't really have anything to add. I mean, I agree, like,
I have one process thing, and it may not make sense, but it may not be useful, but a lot of these goals are there's no way to know if you've achieved it. So do we have authority to go through and change the goal even just the wording of it,
To be measurable.
to be measurable. So, for example, create and maintain affordable housing for ownership. I mean, that includes, we have to know what the existing stock of affordable ownership is, what is the definition. I mean, these are all pretty easy to find because they're determined usually by federal government. But then what is the goal? Create and maintain. So, then it becomes measurable if we say we want to grow it by 5%. And that's probably realistic and measurable. And then, but as this goal is written right now, we'll never accomplish it because it's too general.
Well, that makes a lot of sense.
Or to grow 5% by 20, whatever.
It would be great if we could add 2 columns to each line item. One would be a metric, just like you're stating, and the other would be sort of a key code of, in process or being worked on by this committee, or something that gives us a sense of where it currently stands. I mean, that would be a great way to proceed.
I also have been thinking this since the beginning of the meeting, too. Maybe eventually we want to also take this information back to the public. That's how this was all generated. We started with the surveys, and we had large meetings open to the public. I wouldn't personally advocate we did that before we'd accomplished some things that we could sort of show off. I think we want to have some, trophy examples and say, see, this can work. But I would be willing to, in fact, maybe work with ECAT, but if the
That's
group
what
thinks...
Jason's talking about too, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
So that it's a loop, that it's a constant cycle of the group produces, the public says that's just what we wanted, or that's not quite what we wanted, and then it comes back, and it moves in a cyclic way, because in a way, I mean, this document references like a 50-year, 25 to 50-year, but in a way, this is permanent. Hopefully this goes on forever, right?
I think that's absolutely part of the end game, like final, beta testing in my language, process of what we come out with. So how about we do this? We need to go through these line items. I don't think we need to do that now. What I'm saying here is that I want everyone to kind of look at pages 40 and 41. It's a great starting point. If we need to add more items, we can do that as we've done in the past. And the goal is, before the next meeting, to look at these and think, what can be done to make this measurable? It could just be a note, okay? Everyone kind of bring that to the table, and we'll talk about them line item by line item at the next meeting and try and find the best examples of what can be done to make it measurable. And then I will take a different task personally of trying to come up with a key list of possible ratings on status and being discussed at a committee. Completed and done, never going to be touched again. Going on forever, I don't know, I'm going to have to be creative here. And we'll discuss that and tweak it. And so then at the next meeting, we'll begin the process of assigning metrics, and then, if possible, assigning where they stand. When we get through all that, of course, of 2-3 meetings, maybe more, then we're dealing with Jason's plan and your idea to try and figure out how we kind of put this up against the litmus test to the public, get sort of a seal of approval, as it were. And then we go to the next chapter. Does that sound like a plan? Okay. Anything to add from anyone? Okay, I make key. In that case, unless there's anything specific about housing that anyone wants to talk to now, it's time to get to the reports. And if anyone here on any specific topic, Michael, I'd like to start with you. Because we all had the little topics in our last agenda that we were talking about. Yours was the wellhead protection.
Right.
If anyone has, and if you don't have anything new to report, just say nothing new to report.
Well, nothing new to report.
Okay.
It was easy. The only thing is I really don't know where to start with, going after how we could increase the wellhead protection area to the downtown without, causing all sorts of problems for business and all that. So I'm probably going to try to pursue that and see if there's any other regions that actually have that problem and how they work around it. So.
Okay. Are you still working on that document?
The wellhead protection, yeah.
Cool. All right, any other reports, anything? I specifically turned to Michael because I haven't heard from him in a while and I wanted to say hi, so. Anything else that anyone had been working on that you'd like to report on? No?
I do. I didn't want to.
Go for
I feel
it.
like I've been talking all night, so sorry. Yeah, actually, I got in contact with an Easthampton teacher who's very interested and excited about the idea of getting the Easthampton history into the curriculum. And so what I had said to her was that I'd come to this meeting and sort of verify any details about the goal, but essentially she's more than willing to basically what I think it boils down to is projects that will get students involved in learning Easthampton history. So I didn't know if others had, obviously I do have some ideas about what some of those projects could be, but I wanted to bring it to the committee and get feedback. And
I feel like I just read some history when I reread this.
Great.
The first section, how we prospered in World War I. I did a speech for the local works committee that I put before some people too, where I did some history research on what we used to be and how we've changed over the years, and that stuff is great, but this is an art project, yes?
Well, in my conversation with her made it seem like she was open. The things that I had come up with, my personal ideas tended to be art things. Like there's the stereograph views. And so, for example, I'm interested in going back to the library and getting more, digitizing those stereographs and getting students to do old school 3D. I figure 3D is a catchphrase for kids, and if they get the concept that yes, in the 1800s you had 3D and it looked like this, and they can actually look at the town in 3D, but they can make their own stereograph. I found
That's cool.
some online instructions for how you make your own and things like that. So that's the kind of thing I tended to come
Has
up with.
anyone ever done pressure cooker design before?
Yeah.
All right, we'll go around the room right now. Everyone come out with first thing that comes up your head, stupid or not. Right? This is the worst advertising agency tactic anyway. I've been in any boardrooms doing this before. Pick, for each student, divvy up 5 years of history. Pick someone from Easthampton and talk about them going back 5 years in a range of 100 years.
Do what?
That's an idea.
That was his idea.
Oh, that's your idea. I'm like, are you, no, I mean, the
Reports
Historical
on people.
Society is amazing, and I know that some students go, my aunt is the president right now, and she's always like, bring me students, and if you've never been in that house, you should go in that house, because it's like
That's cool.
experiential education at its best. It's amazing. So I think just getting students there to look at things.
Yeah, that's a good connection.
I don't know if this quite relates, but as a project, the first thing that came to my mind when you were talking about stereograms was also having them create like a little shoebox diorama. Something really simple, and you take a shoebox and you can look into it, and maybe there's some sort of a little view or something in it.
Perfect.
There are also all sorts of historical documents at the Congregational Church.
Very cool. Excellent. That's why they call it pressure cooker.
One of the things we might be looking at was doing some renovation cleanup at some of the old cemeteries, and maybe, dealing with some of the old gravestones and whatnot.
That's really
It's a good way to look at some history, too.
Yeah, it's a good perspective also.
Maybe rubbings.
Well,
yeah.
I don't encourage those anymore, but
Well, that's
but there's, photographs now.
Yeah.
It's easy enough to do digitally.
Great idea. Okay.
Is there a Easthampton history book, local
There is a
person?
book, yeah.
There is one, yeah.
Yes.
It's a good book too.
Is it accessible?
Yeah, I think,
It's at the library.
Is it the library?
I think it's also sold at the bookstore right downtown, it's that way.
Neshawanek Gallery has it, and
Yeah.
there's actually more than one. I'm just right now reading the biography of Samuel Williston, which is available from the Williston Library. So.
It's starting to feel like I want to take this class.
and but finish your thought. Yeah.
I guess I'm thinking of a coloring book for.
There used to be.
There is a
do you
coloring
remember?
book. I actually.
It was.
I have it in
Yes.
my house.
Yeah, I have.
It's so amazing.
I have that and could digitize it in the coloring book.
Maybe we can even find, as a project, new artists to inspire in addition to that.
Or
That's
there must be Easthampton High School Art Club.
Oh, actually get the kids to do it.
There isn't, but there should be. There's very little going on at the high school, but it would be great. I started a photo club over there, and like the kids didn't even know what to do with themselves. I'm like, really? Were you just here to make art with us? So I mean, that's another tapping into the high school.
Excellent.
They have not a lot to do.
A lot of room to do
A
stuff.
lot of room.
I'm just thinking of not a project, but just of a way to understand more of what I feel like it should be at least a part of the core curriculum to embed history, local history into the curriculum. Like, I think that that's probably on every teacher's kind of to-do list. Now, how they do that is probably just left up to the teacher. And so I think it could be interesting to have a conversation with like the superintendent and just see, or maybe not that quite high, but maybe with principals, if there is a, I don't even know how you get in FaceTime with principals, but
That's easy.
I mean,
Yeah, they're always looking to
Yeah,
talk. to folks.
getting FaceTime with the principals is
Same with Nancy Fons. She's very accessible, great person.
And my impression is this is just the beginning.
yeah,
I
I'd love
bet.
to attack it that way.
Yeah, if she does something that's successful, I'm sure other teachers will likely follow suit. By then, I imagine the ice is broken for a conversation on working it into the curriculum for all the schools.
Yeah.
My impression, again, was that this was something that she'd come up with independently as well, and so it's not like I think it'll be difficult to open those floodgates up. And
Yeah.
once they're open,
This teacher you're talking to, what grade levels are you talking?
elementary school.
Okay.
I think this is a great idea, and I'm loving that you're rolling with it. I also think you guys came up with great ideas
Yeah,
under a lot of pressure. Sorry to toss that at you, but I love that.
What's it called again?
Pressure cooker, yeah, I just made it up.
Design?
So I'm sorry, but I guess if you want the follow-up too, because I had brought up the whole, and by the way, I've been told, don't call them gondolas, that was confusing everybody, pictures. Venice, cable cars.
Cable cars.
So I have someone who's willing to work with me on pre-visualization, and I've gone around, and luckily before the snow hit, and started taking photographs, so that I was able to get some of the background plates that we'll be able to use to show people what this could look like. And there's been quite a few people that have said that they wanted to help.
Wow. I'd love to see some
forward.
mock-ups and such. That would be
I'm
amazing.
actually going to try to just put together a whole presentation.
And unless there's other reports, I believe that wraps up our meeting early.
Well, considering that the last one went
It
late.
did go late, yeah, I owe Kurt for that one. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Actually, hold on, before I do that, I should say 2 weeks from today, 6:30. Good for everybody?
What's the
No.
date?
It's the 17th.
It's the 17th. Don't be
We won't see you there,
Nope.
but we'll see you after that, I'm sure. Okay then, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All against? Abstention? We're free!